four-way valves are one of those tricky things to diagnose on VRV and VRF equipment because, let's be honest, the serviceability on them is we'll use the word subpar. But as you can see, even after I get in the cabinet itself, get access to the valve itself, that they're all the way in the back. So sometimes troubleshooting four-way valves is not exactly the easiest thing to get to. But let's look at how to do that out in the field. And first, that's often overlooked out in the field, that's pretty easy to spot and troubleshoot. You notice here I've got two different heat exchangers on this VRV3 outdoor unit. VRV4, they're stacked on top of each other. But here's the thing, in a humid climate such as Florida, you'll find that my units run maybe 90% in cooling mode for most of the time. So what does that mean? That means that both of these should be outdoor heat exchangers in a condensing state, right, where they have hot gas flowing through them all the time. A dead giveaway on an old system, especially a system with a bad four-way valve, is one of these coils would not look like the other, right? This one here on the right-hand side may be black, may be covered in green mildew and mold and all sorts of algae growing on the coil itself because, again, it never shifts over. It's always stuck in an evaporative state. This coil will sweat and sweat and sweat all summer long to the point where it's so cold and wet all the time that it starts to grow things on the coil. And so two different noticeable colors on the coil, one being light like this and one being extremely dark, is a dead giveaway that a four-way valve has failed and is not shifting. Look for it out in the field. Notice here that on this particular model, the one that we just looked at behind me, when we take everything apart and you actually get to the valves, notice here there are two four-way valves on my right-hand side, or if you're looking at the unit on the left-hand side, and only one here on the left-hand side. You're going to find with VRV and VRF equipment, there are a lot of four-way valves. Why do we call them four-way valves? Well, when you look at the actual valve, you'll notice here we have three connections on the bottom, one on the top. Four separate connections on this four-way valve. You'll find that in residential applications, you get used to calling it a reversing valve. Well, for this, it doesn't really reverse the flow of refrigerant, more so redirect it to some other part of the system. Now, because this is heat recovery and not heat pump, we have three sets of valves on this one particular outdoor cabinet. And why is that? We can get into the science behind it and how heat recovery works, but essentially we have two separate heat exchangers, one left, one right. There's a four-way valve dedicated just for the flow of refrigerant for those coils, whether it's in parallel operation, 100% heating, or 100% cooling. The last valve that we have here, the third one, is the actual dual gas line. This is the one that determines on three-pipe heat recovery whether that third line is a hot gas line or a secondary suction line. So let's get into how do we troubleshoot these and test them out in the field when we can't trust the service data or trust what we see on the actual service tools. Notice here with a four-way valve that the top portion here, or the smaller line that you see that comes off the top of this four-way valve, is your discharge line. This means that this is always in a high pressure, right, high pressure, high temperature state. We need that because that's where it takes the gas from to actually pressurize either side of the cylinder to shift that internal mechanism. So what happens when it doesn't shift? Well, if it doesn't shift, there could be sand, contaminants, you name it, built up inside of this valve that isn't allowing it to shift or even displaced. We've had ones where screws have come out of the actual assembly to where they don't line up anymore. They get stuck in the chamber here and they won't shift. Right? That's a four-way valve that has failed. A four-way valve that will not shift when energized, right, with a solenoid on the outside here, whether it's 120 or 240 volts, not allowing it to go from left to right. Notice here that because this is always high pressure state, the sensor line is always in a low pressure state, right? It's the reference tube on here. You notice that if it's shifted here to the left, it's going to this dead head here, which bleeds back over into the suction line, right? And if it's shifted over to the right here, then it's connecting these two pipes here, which goes to our outdoor heat exchanger, right? That would be in an evaporative state. So it would be shifted over here. If it's in an evaporative state, connecting it to the suction line. If shifted over here, it's sending hot gas up and over to the outdoor heat exchanger, deadheading the suction right back to itself. Now you're asking, well, how the heck do I determine that? Well, I actually happen to have one of Klein's newer flashlights I got off TruTech Tools. It has a strong magnet on the base. Now, any strong magnet will do, not a weak magnet. And what you'll do here is we'll check on the end. Now, if the four-way valve was shifted all the way to the right-hand side, you'll find that it sticks, and we've got no magnetism here. However, if I move further back on the chamber, you'll find that, boom, it grabs the actual assembly that's inside of here, which tells me that this assembly has shifted to the left-hand side, which means it's all the way to the left, connecting my suction line back over to my suction line. It's dead-headed right here on itself, which means the hot gases should be flowing this way, up and over. Now, based upon the mode that my system is in, whether it's in cooling or heating, it'll tell me if this four-way valve is on or off. The service manual will tell you which direction that's supposed to be. Now, if I think about the science behind this, and I know that my system is in a 100% cooling state, that means that there should be hot gas going from here over to my actual outdoor heat exchanger. Now the question now is, that is what I know to be true for cooling, so whether it's on or off, I don't care anymore. Now I want to do is check, is the position correct? Now you can see if the temperature on this line to the outdoor heat exchanger is hot, okay, well then I know that it's shifted. But if I wanted to just verify, or maybe I wanted to see it shift, maybe it's getting stuck halfway in between. Maybe this magnet is energized right here in the middle and not on the far end or on the far left. That would be a partial shift, right? And you would see where you're actually bleeding hot gas to both sides of the chamber. But for this sake here, we can see that our suction line is connected, our hot gas line is going to the outdoor heat exchanger. This four-way valve is in a cooling state, right? It's sending hot gas to the outdoor heat exchanger, and it is not stuck. Now, when I shift over to heating mode, this will shift. It will drag the magnet with it to the end of this valve here, and that'll tell me that the four-way valve for this module has shifted correctly. It's shifted all the way to the end. And the same thing is for the dual pressure line. You'll notice here that it's also all the way to the left here, which means that it's connecting my suction line over here, right? Hot gas is connected to my dual gas line. This is probably going to be energized in the cooling state where it's dual suctions, where it's connecting my third line over to my suction line, which means that this should be shifted all the way to the right-hand side, not the left-hand side like it is now. Again, it's an easy check to just take a strong magnet on the end of your four-way valve and see. You can see it's shifted all the way to the left because it's sticking on the end here. The same is true. There's an internal mechanism that is going to slide from left to right, and because of that, the end seals on it are magnetic. And so I can check that with a simple magnet to see, hey, looky there, it actually sticks. If I put it here in the middle, it falls right off. There is nothing here for it to grab except for at the end of the chamber. This is how we check four-way valves and their positions with a magnet out in the field. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I'll see you guys on the next one.